The turkey hit the floor with a wet smack, gravy splattering across the heirloom Persian rug like blood from a fresh wound. Stephen's heart slammed against his ribs as Aunt Karen's voice sliced through the chaos. "We won't poison this holiday with your perversion. Boy, not in my house." And in that frozen second, as Donald's hand slipped from his like a coward's retreat, Stephen knew love wasn't enough to thaw the ice of a family's hate. Stephen had always chased the American dream like it was a freight train he could hop if he just ran fast enough. Small-town boy from Ohio, scraping through community college on scholarships and grit, landing a graphic design gig in Chicago that paid just enough to afford a shoebox apartment overlooking Lake Michigan. At 28, he figured he'd nailed the landing. Steady job, a rescue mutt named Gus who didn't judge, and Donald with his easy laugh, corn-fed charm, and those hazel eyes that crinkled like autumn leaves when he smiled. They'd met at a Pride afterparty 3 years back. Bodies slick with sweat under rainbow lights, hands finding each other in the crush like magnets finally clicking home. Donald, a high school history teacher from a sprawling farm family in rural Indiana, had whispered into Stephen's ear that night, "You're the plot twist I didn't see coming." And Stephen had fallen hard, believing in the fairy tale where two guys could build a life without the villains crashing the castle. But villains don't announce themselves with horns and pitchforks. They slink in wearing cardigans and crosses, murmuring prayers over pot roast. The first holiday invite came that fall. A casual email from Donald's mom, Linda, family Thanksgiving at the farmhouse. "Bring your famous apple pie. Can't wait to meet you." Stephen had spent weeks agonizing over the recipe, tweaking the crust until it flaked like gold, imagining the warmth of a table where he wasn't the outsider. He pictured Donald's siblings, Mark the accountant, Sarah the nurse trading stories, his own awkward jokes landing soft. When they pulled up in Donald's beat-up Ford F-150, gravel crunching under tires like brittle bones, Stephen's stomach fluttered with that mix of nerves and hope that felt dangerously like belonging. The farmhouse loomed like a Norman Rockwell painting gone slightly sour. Wraparound porch sagging under ivy. American flag limp in the November chill. Smoke curling from the chimney like a beckoning finger. Linda enveloped Donald in a hug that smelled of lavender and regret, then turned to Stephen with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "So you're the friend," she said, the word landing like a polite slap. Inside, the air was thick with turkey brine and unspoken rules. Uncle Ray, red-faced from the pre-dinner bourbon, clapped Stephen on the back too hard. "Heard you're one of them artsy types. Drawin' rainbows for a living." Laughter rippled, forced and jagged, and Stephen forced his own grin, slicing into the pie with hands that trembled just enough to nick his thumb. Dinner unfolded like a slow-motion car wreck. Mark dominated the talk, droning about tax brackets and real American values, his wife nodding like a bobblehead. Sarah shot Stephen pity glances, her fork scraping china like nails on a chalkboard. Donald sat rigid beside him, foot pressed against Stephen's under the table, a Morse code of reassurance that said, "Hang in there, babe." But when the topic veered to the gays in the schools these days, Ray's voice booming over the clink of silverware, Linda's hand froze mid-reach for the cranberry sauce. "We love the Lord here," she said softly, eyes on her plate. "And the Lord don't approve of arrangements like yours." The room hushed, a vacuum sucking out the air. Stephen's pulse thundered. He waited for Donald to bridge the gap, to say, "This is my partner, my love, our life." Instead, Donald cleared his throat, voice barely above a whisper. "Mom's right. Holidays are for family traditions. Maybe next year we keep it simple." Stephen's world tilted. The pie soured in his mouth, betrayal bitter as bile. He excused himself to the porch, breath fogging the night air, stars mocking him from a sky too vast for one broken heart. Behind the screen door, voices murmured, Donald's low and placating, Linda's laced with triumph. When he came back in, Donald wouldn't meet his eyes, and the drive home was a graveyard of silence. Chicago's skyline a distant promise of escape. That was the band's genesis, unspoken but ironclad. No more invites, no casual mentions. Donald spun it as giving them space, but Stephen saw the fracture lines spiderwebbing their foundation. Holidays became minefields. Stephen alone with takeout Thai on Thanksgiving, scrolling Instagram feeds of perfect families while Gus licked soy sauce from his fingers. Christmas, he strung light solo, the glow mocking the emptiness. Donald went home each time, returning with Tupperware of leftovers and apologies that tasted like ash. It's just one weekend, Steve. They're getting older. I can't rock the boat. But the boat was already capsizing, and Stephen was the one clinging to the wreckage. Winter bled into spring, their love a stubborn weed pushing through concrete cracks. Weeknights, they'd collapse onto Stephen's thrift store couch, Donald's head in his lap, fingers tracing tattoos of forgotten lovers on Stephen's arm. I hate this, Donald would mutter, voice muffled against denim. Hate lying to them about us. Stephen would stroke his hair, whispering dreams of a future untethered. Maybe a cabin in the Smokies, just them and the mountains. But doubt festered like an untreated wound. Friends noticed. Jamal from work cornered him in the break room. You deserve a man who shouts your name from the rooftops, not hides you in the basement. Stephen laughed it off, but the words lodged like shrapnel. By summer, the strain showed in fissures, arguments over nothing, whose turn to do dishes, why Donald's phone buzzed at odd hours with Mom on the screen. One humid July night, after a Cubs game where Donald flinched at a kiss cam spotlight, Stephen snapped. Am I your dirty secret, Don? Or just the guy who warms your bed till the family's calling? Donald's face crumpled, hands raking through his hair. It's not that. They're my blood. Grandpa Harlan's the only one who asks about you. Says you're good people. Harlan, the family's patriarch, 92 and sharp as a tack, wheelchair-bound but unbowed, the one who'd pinned a Purple Heart to his flannel at every gathering. Stephen clung to that sliver of hope, but it frayed when Donald added, the rest. They think you're leading me astray. Fall circled back like a vulture, Thanksgiving looming. The email came from Sarah this time. Family only this year. Love you, Don. Tell Steve hi. Stephen's chest caved. He packed a bag that night, crashing at Jamal's with the excuse of needing space. Donald begged him to stay, voice cracking over the phone. Don't do this. We can fix it, but fixes require two hammers, and Donald's was dulled by deference. Weeks blurred into a haze of gym sessions and freelance gigs, Stephen sketching designs of fractured hearts that sold too well. Donald's texts piled up, emojis of hearts, pleas laced with nostalgia, but Stephen's replies grew curt, a wall rising brick by emoji. Then, the call came on a crisp November eve. Donald's voice a raw wire. Grandpa's dying. Pneumonia. Come home. Stephen's resolve shattered like cheap glass. He drove through the night, wipers slashing rain like accusations, arriving at the farmhouse as dawn bled pink across the fields. Harlan lay in the guest room, skin like parchment over bones, oxygen mask hissing like a serpent. His eyes, faded blue but fierce, locked on Stephen the moment he crossed the threshold. Knew you'd come. Son, he rasped, hand beckoning. Donald hovered in the doorway, shadows under his eyes like bruises. As Stephen knelt, Harlan's grip was surprisingly iron. Heard the whispers. Bullshit. Love's the only war worth fighting. Tears pricked Stephen's eyes. In that moment, the old man's hand was a lifeline tossed into the storm. The family gathered that afternoon, a vigil of hushed tones and styrofoam coffee cups. Linda fussed with blankets. Ray paced with a flask hidden in his pocket. Mark scrolled emails on his phone. Sarah squeezed Stephen's shoulder. First real touch in a year, muttering, "He's tougher than he looks," but undercurrents swirled. Glances that said, "Why are you here?" Dinner was a somber affair, pie cooling untouched on the sideboard. As plates cleared, Harlan's voice cut through the murmur, amplified by the room's echo. "Will me to the table. Got something to say." The dining room held its breath as Harlan's wheelchair creaked across the threshold, propelled by Donald's steady hands. The old man clutched a battered shoebox under one arm, its lid warped from decades of attic dust, contents spilling slightly, faded envelopes, yellowed clippings, a ribbon-tied bundle of letters. Linda's brow furrowed, a flicker of unease crossing her face. "Daddy, you should rest," she urged, but Harlan waved her off with a grunt that rattled his frame. "Rest is for the dead, girl. And I ain't there yet." He positioned himself at the table's head, the very spot where patriarchs had carved turkeys and verdicts for generations. Stephen stood frozen by the china cabinet, pulse a war drum in his ears. Donald sank into a chair beside him, hand brushing Stephen's knee under the tablecloth. A silent "whatever happens, I'm here." But Stephen knew better. Donald's "here" had always come with asterisks. Harlan's gaze swept the room, lingering on each face like a judge tallying sins. Ray shifted uncomfortably, loosening his collar. Sarah leaned forward, elbows on the oak, curiosity etching lines around her mouth. Mark pocketed his phone, feigning attention. Linda hovered, ringing a dish rag like a rosary. "Family," Harlan began, voice gravel over silk. "We gather for thanks. But thanks ain't just for the bounty. It's for the truths we bury, the ones that fester like gangrene." He paused, coughing into a handkerchief spotted with flecks of red, the room tensing as if one wheeze might topple him. When he straightened, there was steel in his spine. "Today, we talk about love. Real love. Not the Hallmark card shit, but the kind that stares down bayonets and says, 'Not today.'" He pried open the shoebox with gnarled fingers, pulling out the first artifact, a sepia-toned photograph, edges curled like ancient scrolls. The image showed two young men in crisp army uniforms, arms slung around each other in front of a bombed-out Normandy cafe, grins defiant against the rubble. One was Harlan, 22 and unscarred, his buzz cut gleaming under wartime sun. The other, taller, with a lopsided smile and eyes like storm clouds, was Eli, his name inked faintly on the back in Harlan's schoolboy script. "Me and my shadow, 44. Survived Bastogne together." Harlan held it aloft, the lamplight casting long shadows that danced like ghosts. "This here's Eli Cohen. Jewish boy from Brooklyn, tough as jerky and twice as chewy. We shipped out together, Fox Company, 101st Airborne. Screaming Eagles, they called us. But in the foxholes, it was just me and him against the world." Murmurs rippled. Ray's scoff low and disbelieving, Linda's hand fluttering to her throat. Harlan's eyes narrowed, pinning his brother-in-law. Laugh if you want, right? But you weren't there when the shells rained like judgment, when we'd huddle in the mud, his hand on my neck to keep the cold out. Eli saved my hide more times than I can count, dragged me from a burning half-track outside Falaise, patched my gut wound with his own shirt. And when the medics hauled me stateside, he wrote every week. Letters that smelled of rations and regret. He fished out the bundle, ribbons fraying, postmarks faded but fervent. Stephen's throat tightened. He could almost hear the paper crinkle under fingers starved for touch. After the war, Harlan continued, voice dipping into a cadence like a fireside yarn spun for reluctant scouts. I came home to this farm, married your grandma, God rest her, built a life of corn and kids. Eli? He faded into the woodwork. No ticker tape for fellas like us back then. Don't ask. Don't tell wasn't policy. It was survival. But he sent one last letter. 49 it was. Said he was heading west, chasing gold in California dreams. Enclosed a photo, him and another soldier, same arm around shoulder pose. Love's a foxhole you dig together, he wrote. Don't let the world fill it in. Harlan's hand trembled as he laid the letters down, the table a battlefield of ink and memory. Tears glistened in his eyes, unashamed. I kept him hidden. Shame's a heavy load, family. But seeing what y'all pulled on Stephen here, banning him from our table like he's Typhoid Mary, woke me up. Eli deserved better. And so does he. The silence stretched taut as a bowstring. Linda's face blanched, lips parting on a gasp. Daddy, that's different. The war, the times, Harlan's laugh barked, sharp and unforgiving. Times? Love don't give a damn about calendars. Linda. You think I fought Nazis to come home and build walls around hearts? He turned to Stephen then, eyes softening like dawn on frost. Boy, you got a good one in my grandson. Donald's got my blood stubborn as sin, but true when it counts. I see how he looks at you, like you're the only shore in the storm. Don't let our poison chase you off. Stephen's vision blurred, a sob clawing up his chest. He'd imagined this reckoning 1,000 ways in lonely nights, screaming matches, slammed doors, but not this quiet thunder, not Harlan wielding history like a shield. Donald's hand found his, squeezing with a desperation that bordered on prayer. But Ray shattered the moment, chair scraping back as he rose, face mottled. This is horseshit, Harlan. You're spinning fairy tales to justify whatever this is. The Bible's clear, man with man. Abomination. His finger jabbed toward Stephen, accusation dripping like venom. Mark nodded faintly, discomfort twisting his features, while Sarah shot Ray a glare hot enough to curdle milk. Harlan didn't flinch. Instead, he delved back into the box, emerging with a crisp envelope. Manila, official stamp from the VA, dated 1952. Receipts. Right. You want scripture? Here's mine. He slid it across the table, the paper whispering like a confession. Inside, a discharge form, honorable but coded, the kind that buried scandals under bureaucracy. And pinned to it, a smaller note, typed on War Department letterhead, Service Record Amendment, Private. Harlan J. Whitaker and Private. Elijah Cohen commended for valor. Bastogne offensive. Personal correspondence redacted per policy. Harlan's voice dropped, intimate as a grave. They caught us once, you know. Behind the lines, sharing more than smokes. Officer threatened court-martial, But Eli talked him down, said we were brothers in arms. They let it slide, but the file followed us. I burned mine when I got home. Eli's? He sent it back. A fuck you to the system. Ray's bluster deflated, chair thudding as he sat, eyes darting like a cornered fox. Linda wept openly now, shoulders shaking, the dish rag forgotten. Why didn't you tell us, Daddy? She whispered. Harlan reached for her hand, calluses rough against her softness. Because telling's a risk, daughter. And risks, they cost lives. Eli died in '72 cancer, alone in some Reno boarding house. No one claimed him. I read the obit in the paper, drove all night to scatter dirt on his grave. Vowed then, my family wouldn't carry that hate. The room exhaled, a collective release laced with grief's sharp edge. Sarah broke first, rounding the table to hug Harlan, her whisper fierce, I'm sorry, Grandpa. For all of us. Mark mumbled agreement, phone forgotten. Even Ray muttered a gruff hell of a story, averting his eyes. Donald pulled Stephen close, breath hot against his ear. I should have done this sooner. Stood up. I'm so fucking sorry. Stephen nodded, tears soaking Donald's shirt, the weight of years lifting just enough to breathe. But reckonings aren't tidy. They're marbled with regret. As night fell, the family dispersed to corners. Linda in the kitchen scrubbing pots like penance. Ray nursing a beer on the porch. Harlan wheeled to the window, Stephen at his side. Go easy on him, the old man said. Gaze on the moonlit fields. Hate's learned, son. But so's love. Stephen squeezed his shoulder, the gesture small but seismic. In the quiet, with Donald's arms around them both, the farmhouse felt less like a fortress and more like a beginning cracked, but standing. Yet dawn brought the real test. Harlan's fever spiked before breakfast, coughs racking him like artillery fire. The ambulance wailed up the drive, red lights painting the barn in hellish glow. At the hospital in Lafayette, monitors beeped a dirge, doctors murmuring about fluids and time. Family crowded the waiting room, vending machine coffee turning to sludge in styrofoam cups. Stephen sat apart at first, half expecting the band to resurrect in whispers. But Sarah dragged him into the fold, linking arms. Your family, Steve. Deal with it. Donald never left his side, thumb tracing circles on Stephen's wrist, a vow etched in skin. Hours stretched. Harlan rallied briefly, demanding no pity party from his bedside. He pressed the shoebox into Donald's hands. Keep it safe. Tell the story when I'm gone. By evening, stability held, but the shadow lingered. Driving back, Donald gripped the wheel white-knuckled. I almost lost you because I was scared. Won't happen again. Stephen leaned against the window, exhaustion a heavy coat. Prove it, he said softly, not a challenge but a plea. Winter clamped down on Indiana like a vice, snow blanketing the fields in judgmental white, turning the farmhouse into a cocoon of forced intimacy. Harlan stabilized enough for discharge, but the pneumonia had carved hollows in his cheeks. His once booming voice now a rasp that carried the weight of unspoken farewells. The family orbit tightened around him, nurses rotating shifts, meals delivered on trays, the air thick with the scent of antiseptic and pine from a pre-lit tree Sarah had dragged in, declaring, holidays wait for no one. Stephen, uninvited no more, found himself woven into the fabric, chopping onions for Linda's chili, debating Civil War tactics with Harlan over chess, the old man checkmating him every time with a wink. Strategies in the heart, Boy! Even enduring Ray's grudging overtures. A shared six-pack in the barn. Tales of Vietnam laced with regret. But peace is a fragile truce in a house built on fault lines. Donald and Stephen claimed the attic guest room, its slanted ceiling pressing low like the ceiling of their doubts. Nights were a tangle of limbs and murmurs, lovemaking urgent as if to seal cracks before they widened. "I love you," Donald breathed against Stephen's collarbone, fingers mapping scars from a childhood of hiding. More than blood, more than anything, Stephen believed him in those stolen hours, bodies aligning like puzzle pieces long separated. But mornings brought the mirror. Donald's phone buzzing with Linda's check-ins. His hesitation before introducing Stephen as my partner in town at the pharmacy. Progress. Yes, but incremental, like thawing permafrost, prone to refreezing. The real fracture came 2 weeks before Christmas, when Mark announced his engagement. Over pot roast in the dim kitchen, he beamed about Emily Blonde, Baptist, a good Midwestern girl from his firm. Toasts rang out, glasses clinking like chimes, but Stephen caught the undercurrent. Glances sliding his way, Linda's smile tight as piano wire. "Family's growing," she said, patting Mark's hand. "In the right ways." The words landed like shrapnel. Stephen excused himself early, boots crunching snow to the old oak behind the barn, its branches clawing the sky like arthritic fingers. He lit a cigarette, bad habit resurrected from stress, exhaling smoke that curled like questions. "Am I the wrong way?" Donald found him there, coat unbuttoned against the bite, breath fogging between them. "She didn't mean it like that." Stephen's laugh was hollow, ash flicking into the drift. "Didn't she? Every toast feels like a footnote. Congrats. But not for you too." Donald's jaw clenched, hazel eyes stormy. "It's habit, Steve. Decades of this shit. Give it time. Time, the eternal dodge, the thief that stole their youth." Stephen crushed the butt under his heel. "Time's what we don't have. Harlan's clock is ticking. Yours feels stalled." They stood toe-to-toe, words escalating to barbs. Donald accusing Stephen of impatience, Stephen firing back about cowardice. It ended with Donald storming inside, door slamming like a guillotine. Betrayal's second act unfolded on a gray afternoon, Harlan napping under quilts, the house humming with holiday prep. Stephen wandered the attic, sorting boxes for Linda's declutter, when he unearthed a leather journal, Donald's, from college, spine cracked like a confessional. Curiosity, that serpent, uncoiled. He flipped it open, pages whispering secrets. Entries from 5 years back. "Met this guy at the bar, Jake. Felt real. But Mom's voice in my head. Choose wisely, son. Bailed. Then, their era. Stephen's everything, wild, kind, makes me want to burn it all down. But family, they'd disown me. Hide him, for now." The final one, dated last month. Thanksgiving ban was right. Keeps the peace. Love him enough to let him go if it comes to that. Stephen's knees buckled, journal thudding to the floorboards. Let him go. The words echoed like a verdict, carving out his gut. He confronted Donald that evening, journal thrust like evidence in the barn's hayloft, lantern light swinging shadows across rafters. "Is this the progress? Planning my exit strategy?" Donald's face drained of color, hands up in surrender. "Steve, that's old raw thoughts, not gospel." But Stephen saw the flinch, the evasion in averted eyes. "You wrote it last month. While Harlan was fighting for us, you were plotting peace at my expense." Voices rose, hay bales muffling the fury, until Donald snapped, "What do you want? Me to torch my life for yours? They're all I have left." The admission hung, poisonous. Stephen recoiled as if slapped. "And I'm what? A phase? Collateral?" He bolted then, truck keys jangling, tires spinning gravel into the dusk toward Chicago's indifferent lights. The drive was a blur of wipers and wails, radio crooning some country ballad about lost loves that hit too close. Jamal's couch welcomed him with pity and pizza, but sleep evaded, chased by what-ifs. Days bled into a week. Donald's calls went to voicemail, texts unread. Work blurred, designs half-finished, clients placated with excuses. Then, Christmas Eve, a knock rattled the door. Sarah, bundled in parka and practicality, arms laden with Tupperware and a manila envelope. "Heard you bailed." "Dumbass move." She breezed in, commandeering the coffee maker, spilling the tale. Harlan's relapse. Bad enough for the ER, but he'd rallied with a nurse's help. "Grandpa's furious at all of us. Says family's not blood. It's the ones who stay in the foxhole." She slid the envelope across the formica. "Harlan's doing," she'd sworn. Inside, a deed fragment, yellowed, for a plot in Reno Cemetery. Eli's, transferred via some wartime loophole to Harlan's name. And a letter, Harlan's scrawl shaky but sure. "Stephen, went back last spring, scattered more than dirt. Told Eli Stone about you. Said you're the kind of love that wins wars. Don't let my fool grandson squander it. Come home. Receipts attached. My will. You're in it, same as Donald. Family ain't optional." Clipped. Pages from the will. Stephen named co-beneficiary on the farm's East Acre. "For the life you build, unapologetic." Tears hit the paper, smudging ink. Sarah hugged him fierce. "He's fighting time to fix us." "Your move." Stephen arrived at the farmhouse past midnight, snow swirling like confetti from a broken promise. The porch light burned sentinel. Inside, carols droned low from a radio, the tree aglow with mismatched ornaments. Harlan dozed in his recliner, oxygen humming. Linda stirred cocoa in the kitchen, pausing to murmur, "He's upstairs." "Been a mess." Donald looked wrecked when Stephen crested the stairs. Eyes red-rimmed, beard unkempt, flannel untucked like defeat. "You came, not a question. Prayer." Stephen crossed the room, journal discarded on the dresser like shed skin. "Harlan's right. Foxholes aren't solo." They collided then, kissed salt sour with tears, hands clutching as if the world might pry them apart. But dawn brought Harlan's fever breaking, not gently, but with a vengeance that demanded audience. Wheeled to the living room, box of receipts in lap. He gathered them all. Ray nursing black coffee, Mark and Emily tentative on the couch, Sarah snapping photos for posterity, Linda at his side, hand on his knee. "Last lesson," Harlan wheezed, pulling a final photo, him and Eli, post-war, arms linked at a VFW picnic, faces alight with secret joy. "Love's the receipt that matters. No returns." He beckoned Stephen and Donald forward, pressing the image into their joined hands. "Build on this. And invite me to the wedding, wheelchair and all." The room softened, laughter bubbling through tears. Ray's chuckle reluctant, Mark's toast genuine. Outside, snow hushed the world, a blank page for rewriting. But as Harlan tired, pulling Stephen aside, his whisper carried prophecy. "Watch the home fires. Son. They burn hottest when ignored. Stephen nodded, unease flickering. Harlan's eyes held warning, a shadow on the horizon. New Year's dawned brittle and bright, the farmhouse groaning under fresh powder, resolutions hanging unspoken like icicles. Harlan's rally held, but fragility shadowed him. Meals pureed, steps rationed, stories retold with a cadence that hinted at endings. The family, chastened, circled closer, Linda baking pies with Stephen's tweaks, her apologies baked into every crust. Ray clearing snow with uncharacteristic vigor, grunts substituting for sorry. Even Mark, suit shed for flannel, helping Donald mend the porch rail, hammers sinking like hesitant heartbeats. Stephen and Donald navigated the thaw cautiously. Nights in the attic evolving from desperate clutches to lazy explorations, mornings shared with coffee and quiet plans. Vegas in spring? Donald murmured one dawn, lips brushing Stephen's temple. Elvis impersonator. The works. Stephen laughed. Hope a tentative bloom. Only if Harlan's the witness. But undercurrents churned, dark as the Wabash in flood. Whispers filtered from town. Old-timers at the diner eyeing Donald's truck. Murmurs of Harlan's gone soft in the head, spilling those queer war tales. Ray, ever the conduit, brought it home one bitter night, face flushed from more than windburn. Over stew in the breakfast nook. He cornered Donald. Folks are talkin'. Church picnic next month. Folks might not take kindly to your situation front and center. Donald stiffened, spoon pausing midair. Stephen, eavesdropping from the hall, felt ice form in his veins. Linda shushed Ray, but the seed lodged. It sprouted in small sabotages, invites to the family Easter brunch arriving late, addressed only to Donald. Sarah's text to Stephen drying up after a neutral ground coffee, where she fidgeted over optics for the kids. Donald dismissed it. They're adjusting, babe. But Stephen saw the erosion, the way Donald's shoulders hunched under invisible weight. Harlan noticed too, summoning Stephen to the sunroom one pallid afternoon, wheelchair by the window overlooking skeletal orchards. They're scared, he rasped, binoculars trained on a distant deer. Change is a wolf at the door. But wolves? They flee from fire. He pressed a key into Stephen's palm. Cold iron, labeled East Acre Barn. Fixed it up last summer. Your foxhole, if storms hit. Stephen pocketed it like contraband, unease coiling. That night, betrayal's blade twisted deeper. Donald's phone lit the dark at 2 a.m. A text from Mark. Church elders want a word. About the farm, the will. Discretion advised. Donald deleted it quick, but not before Stephen glimpsed, heart plummeting. Morning brought confrontation in the mudroom, coats half on for a supply run. What's discretion mean? Don? Hiding me again. Donald's denial cracked like thin ice. It's nothing legal bullshit. Protecting Grandpa's legacy. But his eyes darted. The lie a third presence between them. The church meeting happened that week. Donald slipping away under guise of grading papers. Returning hollow-eyed, smelling faintly of incense and evasion. Stephen waded up, Gus at his feet, the mutt's whine echoing his own. They want Harlan declared incompetent, Donald confessed over lukewarm tea, voice a thread. Say the will's undue influence from that storytime nonsense. Threaten to contest if we push the envelope. Push the envelope. Code for existing. Loving openly. Stephen's laugh was shards. So we're the poison now? After everything. Donald reached for him, but Stephen recoiled. I went to listen, Steve. To fight it. But Mark, he's in their pocket. Says it's for the family's good. Mark's betrayal cut deepest. The golden boy turned Judas with spreadsheets for a halo. That evening, as snow melted to slush, the brothers clashed in the driveway, Donald accusing, Mark deflecting with legalese. It's not personal. The farm's heritage. Can't let fairy tales bankrupt it. Punches weren't thrown, but words were fists, leaving bruises that swelled overnight. Stephen patched Donald's split knuckle in the bathroom, antiseptic stinging like truth. He's your brother, Stephen said softly, bandaging. But I'm your choice. Donald nodded. Fierce, always. Yet doubt lingered, a specter in the rafters. Spring unfurled tentative, crocuses pushing through mud. Harlan's health a seesaw of good days and gasps. Easter came fraught. The brunch at Church Hall, a sea of pastel dresses and suspicion. Stephen attended at Harlan's insistence. Show him your face, son. Ghosts fade in light. But the stairs burned, whispers hissing like steam. Ray's hand on his shoulder felt like chains. Linda's pie, offered with trembling fork, tasted of obligation. Donald held his hand under the table, thumb wars with their fingers a rebellion. But as hymns swelled, a deacon's prayer invoked traditional unions, and Stephen slipped out, gulping April air thick with pollen and pain. The breaking point crested in May, Harlan's birthday, a low-key affair in the East Acre barn, transformed into a haven. String lights dangling from beams, picnic tables laden with barbecue, wildflowers in mason jars. Family gathered, tentative bridges mending over pulled pork and beer. Harlan, frielier but beaming from his chair, raised a toast to receipts and the men who cash 'em. Laughter flowed, genuine for once. Sarah snapping Polaroids, even Mark cracking a smile with Emily on his arm. Stephen and Donald danced slow to an old radio croon, bodies swaying in sawdust, the world narrowing to heartbeat sync. But Ray, 3 beers deep, shattered the idol. Cornering Donald by the cooler, voice slurred. This circus? It's killing him. A nod toward Harlan, dozing in the corner. And us. Church cut ties, donations drying up, 'cause of your parade. Donald shoved him back, eyes blazing. My life ain't your donation plate. Ray swung wild, fist glancing Donald's jaw. Chaos erupted. Sarah pulling Ray away, Mark frozen, Linda wailing. Stephen waded in, hauling Donald clear, blood trickling from his lip. Harlan woke to the fray, voice thundered despite weakness. Enough! Raymond. All of it, if hate's your god. Ray stormed off into twilight, truck roaring gravel. The party limped on, but fractures spiderwebbed. Mark's goodbye curt, Emily's hug absent. Driving home, Donald ice-packed to face, muttered, It's unraveling. Stephen gripped the dash. Then we weaved tighter, but in the attic. As Donald slept bruised, Stephen stared at the ceiling, Harlan's key burning in his pocket like a brand. June brought heat waves and Harlan's decline. Hospital stays blurring into hospice talks, the farmhouse a vigil of beeps and morphine drips. Family splintered. Ray exiled to his trailer. Radio silence. Mark lawyering up. Contest papers filed under precaution. Sarah mediated. Her texts a lifeline. Hold the line. Donald and Stephen tag-teamed nights. One at bedside, the other crashing in the truck bed under stars, making love fierce and fleeting. Marry me, Donald whispered one pre-dawn, ringless but earnest, fingers laced. Stephen's yes was a lifeline, but shadowed by the will's specter. The Chow Trio crashed on a sweltering July 4th, fireworks blooming over the fairgrounds as Harlan coded in his room. Alarms wailed. The family converged, a maelstrom of scrubs and sobs. Donald held Stephen back in the hall, faces pressed to glass, Harlan's chest rising once, twice, then still. The doctor emerged, head bowed. He went peaceful. Collapse followed. Linda fainting into Sarah's arms, Mark pacing with phone in fist, Donald crumpling against the wall, Stephen catching him like a prayer answered too late. Funeral was a battlefield. Church packed with vets in faded uniforms. Eli's story eulogized by Harlan's VFW buddy, a grizzled sergeant who choked on brothers till the end. Ray lurked in back pews, eyes downcast. Mark read the obituary, voice steady but hollow. At graveside, under elms drooping in July humidity, Harlan's casket lowered beside Grandma's, the shoebox buried with him, receipts eternal. Stephen stood sentinel, Donald's hand in his, vowing silent, "We honor this." But betrayal's aftershock quaked days later. Mark's lawyer arrived at the farmhouse, will in hand, contest filed. Undue influence, the suit droned, citing Harlan's delirium from meds. Linda, dazed in black, signed affidavits with trembling hand. Sarah fought, but numbers favored blood. Donald raged in the kitchen, chairs toppling. He knew, planned for this. Stephen pulled him close, storm breaking in sobs. Then we fight dirty. The will reading unfolded in a Lafayette law office. August sun slanting through blinds like accusatory fingers, air conditioner humming a dirge against the heat. Seated around a polished mahogany table, Mark and Emily, crisp in khakis. Sarah, notebook open like armor. Linda, pearls clutched like rosaries. Ray, slouched in ill-fitting suit, nursing a hangover's regret. And Donald and Stephen, united front in faded jeans, hands clasped under the table, a quiet defiance. The attorney, a bespectacled drone named Hargrove, cleared his throat, spectacles glinting. Harlan Whitaker's estate, farm core to siblings per traditional shares. East Acre addendum, to Stephen Harlow, in perpetuity, for the love that endures. Murmurs erupted, Mark's sharp intake. Linda's gasp. Hargrove raised a hand. Contested clauses noted. Evidence of capacity required. Mark leaned forward. Folder slapping the table, medical abstracts. Timestamps from Harlan's delirium days. Affidavits from church deacons attesting emotional manipulation. Stephen's stomach nodded. This was no abstract fight. It was Harlan's ghost on trial. Eli's love dissected like contraband. Donald's grip tightened, knuckles blanching. This is theft. Grandpa was lucid, wrote it with eyes wide open. Hargrove nodded neutrally, sliding exhibits across. The will's video deposition, Harlan's voice crackling from a laptop screen, dated June crisp. I, Harlan James Whitaker, sound mind and failing body, bequeathed the East Acre to Stephen Harlow. Why? 'Cause he and Donald remind me of what I buried. Eli Cohen, my heart, my foxhole. This land's theirs now, free and clear. No takebacks. The room stilled, Harlan's rasp filling the space like smoke. Tears tracked Linda's cheeks. Ray shifted, uncomfortable. Sarah's pen scratched furious notes. Mark countered with psych evals, but Hargrove's brow furrowed at the addendum. A notarized codicil, Harlan's scrawl witnessed by the VFW sergeant. Corroborated capacity. Contention weak. Yet Mark pressed. Voice edged with ambition. Precedent. Family units prioritized. This gift disrupts inheritance. Undo. Emily nodded support, her solidarity a blade. Stephen's chest burned. He rose, chair scraping like a challenge. Precedent? Harlan fought in Bastogne for freedoms you auction off. That acre's not dirt, it's receipts. Eli's, his, ours. Silence blanked the room, Hargrove's pen pausing. Donald stood beside him, shoulder to shoulder. We're contesting the contest. Full probate if needed. Adjournment came with recesses promised. But the war waged in parking lots and porches. Mark cornered Donald post-meeting. Under the office's awning. Rain spitting like spite. Think, bro, this drags the family through mud. Settle, you keep the core. He gets cash equivalent. Quiet. Donald's laugh was bitter. Quiet's what killed Eli. No deal. Fists clenched. Brothers parted enemies. The rift a chasm. Fall harvested tempests. Court dates clashing with harvest. Combines idling as lawyers circled. Sarah defected fully, testifying to Harlan's lucidity. Her voice steady. He planned this. For love. Ray thawed incrementally, dropping tools at the barn one dusk. Muttering to Stephen over fence posts. Old man's ghost haunts me. Sorry don't fix. But acre's yours. Linda baked apologies into bread. Shared over tea. I raised walls. Harlan tore him down. Even Emily softened. A tentative lunch invite laced with curiosity. But Mark's siege endured. Depositions dredging skeletons. Old letters subpoenaed. Eli's grave photos splashed in filings like scandal sheets. Media sniffed, local rag running, farm feud. War heroes' gay legacy divides kin. Paparazzi light at the gates. Neighbors gawking. Donald shielded Stephen. But strain etched them. Arguments over strategy. Nights apart in the guest room. Gus the mediator with wet-nosed nudges. We're losing ourselves. Stephen confessed one stormy night. Thunder rumbling like artillery. Donald pulled him close. Rain lashing windows. Then we find us again. Marry me proper East Acre. Under the oak. The proposal anchored them. A buoy in the gale. They wed in October hush. Small circle under that ancient oak. Sarah officiating via online ordination. Ray and Linda witnesses. Even Mark absent but a card arriving, white flag. Congrats. Truce. Vows exchanged in wind-whipped leaves. Rings simple gold from a Chicago pawnshop. Harlan's photo propped on a stump like blessing. Till the foxhole's empty, Stephen promised. Donald's kiss sealed it. Fierce as foxfire. Court climaxed in November. Thanksgiving Eve. Hargrove's office a coliseum of legalese. Mark's case crumbled. The sergeant's testimony. Eli's letters authenticated as historical exhibit. Harlan's video replayed thrice. Judge, a silver-haired veteran herself, ruled swift. Will stands. East Acre to Harlow Whitaker. Costs to contestant. Gavel fell like grace. Mark deflated. Hand extended in defeat. Family, Donald clasped it. Gnawed heavy. Always was. Healing bloomed uneven. Thanksgiving at the farmhouse. Table set for 11. Turkey carved by Stephen's steady hand. Ray passed potatoes without grumble. Sarah toasted receipts. Linda hugged Donald fierce. Then Stephen, whispering, welcome home. Mark arrived late. Emily in tow. Apologies wrapped in pie. No bands. No whispers, just stories. Harlan's box open on the sideboard. Photos passed like heirlooms. Outside, Snow dusted the East Acre, their plot now deeded. A canvas for futures. Cabin sketches on napkins, dreams voiced over wine. Years folded forward. The farm thrived co-owned. Mark's firm handling legacy trusts with quiet amends. Ray softened into grandpa duties for Sarah's twins. Tales of Bastogne Baudelarized for bedtime. Linda gardened the acre's edge. Wildflowers nodding to Eli. Donald and Stephen built slow. A studio in the barn for Stephen's designs. History lessons infused with Harlan's truths. Pride flags fluttered come June. Unchallenged. On the 5th anniversary, under that oak now strung with lights, they scattered Harlan's ashes, pinched from the urn, a final receipt. To foxholes, Donald toasted, arm around Stephen, Gus at their feet. The wind carried whispers, Eli's laugh, Harlan's rasp. Love, they learned, isn't victory, it's the stubborn stand, the hand held through fire. In America's heartland, where divides run deep as rivers, they stood undivided, human in their scars, romantic in their reach. And in the quiet, with stars pricking the vast sky, Stephen knew, some dreams aren't chased, they're claimed, one defiant step at a time.